and we're going to talk about managing design options in Giraffe. So I've just started out. I'm going to be in LA for this demo. I could be anywhere in the world. I've loaded up a template from the Proforma side of things, and you'll see some cool tools we can use with Proforma. The main features we're going to look at are the ability to add multiple drawing layers and then manage scenarios between drawing layers, and then use views to create storyboards of those drawing layers. And then lastly, we're going to look at analytics. And we're going to do some tips and tricks on the way through on how to manage the actual drawings. So let's go to downtown LA, or maybe somewhere in South LA. I love South LA. I just want to look at the satellite really quickly. And I'm going to add in some layers from Zenus. For those who know LA, that's the local planning GIS system. We can add those straight in. And if you don't know Regrid, definitely worth checking out Regrid. Really good parcel provider for the whole of the US. I'm just going to bring up Regrid as well, and we can start to find a cool site. Obviously, this is LA, so there's a lot of good opportunities. Let's have a look. We're going to design somewhere big. It's not going to knock down a school or build a new stadium. If I want to use the Regrid app to find a site, we're going to do a session on site searching here in the next few months, maybe in January after Christmas. We can have a look at that then. Okay, let's take this parcel right here. I think it's an old industrial facility or commercial facility. It looks like some kind of headquarters of something or other. No, it's a school. Perfect. We're going to knock down a school. So I'm just going to select the boundary of the site, and I'm going to say create new project. We'll call this design optioneering. Okay, so if you've used Giraffe before, you'd be very familiar with creating your concept right out of the box. As I dive into this project, I get the ability to just start drawing and get data immediately. I won't go too deep on different drawing methodologies, but we will turn off the 3D buildings. I'm going to use some of our generative tools to just draw something really quickly. And when I draw from the generative tools, it's going to ask me, do I want to maintain all of those assumptions? I'll say yes. We're going to put a sort of L-shaped resi building there. We're going to do a car park of some kind. We're going to make it multi-deck just for some variation. And sorry, forgive me, we're going to make it multi-deck. 2 or 3 stories. And then maybe back here, we'll just do a bit of a park. So this is our option 1. And please don't hire me as your site planner from just this video. Obviously, not a great design, but that's not the purpose of this demonstration. What we're doing here is outlining how we can manage different scenarios. Okay, so very quickly, I've got 2 buildings. They've got different heights on them. And we want to manage them into a single design scenario. At this point in time, you can see if I look on the left-hand side, I've got 3 layers. 2 of those layers are actually coming from my previous project. So let's delete those when I used that project as a template. So the default layer, if I control the opacity on the default layer, you'll notice when I turn it off, on the right-hand side, all my data disappears. So we can quite quickly say, all right, well, why don't we cut up these 2 buildings onto different layers? And you'll see what happens. We'll call this scenario 2. This also could be phase 2 because a lot of our clients do large master plans and they want to phase buildings out. And let's say these 2 buildings are phase 1 and this building and the park are going to be phase 2 or scenario 2. So to do that, I select the geometries I want to be on a specific layer. And I come over to the left-hand side and under properties, I say, let's move that to scenario 2. Now, when I do that, nothing happens because the urban tab is visualizing what's displayed on the screen. So let's turn down scenario 2 and you'll notice all my metrics update. The number of dwellings dropped, the amount of landscaping dropped, and we're just now seeing on the right-hand side the data that is on the screen. So if I turn scenario 2 on and I drop down the default scenario, then obviously I get the inverse of what I had there before. So you could imagine if you had lots of layers, there's no limit to the number of layers that you have here, and they can be nested, so you can do groups of layers and that sort of thing. That could become a very powerful tool, but turning those on and off can be a bit of a pain. So for those who haven't seen it before, we also have a feature called Views, and Views is a wonderful way to take snapshots of your project. But some people aren't aware that not only does it take snapshots of your project, but it can take snapshots of layer combinations as well. So if we're trying to tell the story of phase 1 and phase 2, or maybe design option 1 and design option 2, we can actually manage our layers here. So I'll turn down scenario 2, and I'm going to save this scenario. You see that little icon up there? What that does is save the layer combinations for the next time I log in. And then I'm going to click on Views, and in Views, we're going to say Add a View. When I add a view, it brings up a dialog that lets me give it a name and define a few things about it. So we'll call this scenario 1, looking west. Save. Now, when I save that, it puts a little thumbnail here on the left-hand side, which means I can always return to not just this camera view, but this combination of layers. So let's go back to layers. We'll turn down default. We'll turn up scenario 2. And scenario 2, I want to look at from the south, looking north. And maybe we want to put 3D buildings on semi-transparent. Again, we'll hit save. We'll go over to views and we'll say add new view. Scenario 2, looking south, looking north. Okay, so now I've got these two layers, these two views here that are controlling my layers and the camera angle. And because they're controlling the layers, it means it's also going to control my data. So when we go to present, or when we come back to this project in 6 months' time and we want to understand what it is that we did, we can pop it over to views and say, okay, remind me what scenario 1 is. And the camera will pan with a nice animation to where we had it, as well as the layer change. So we can say, oh, that's right. Scenario 1 is 156 dwellings and there's an FAR of 0.22. And scenario 2 is far more friendly because we're going to build a park to give back to the city, but we're going to try and get an increased zoning or a height allowance or whatever it might be, and that's going to give us 190 dwellings. So just there, combining layers and views can give you this beautiful storyboard type interface to your project. Now, let's park that idea for a second, because a lot of our clients end up having many parameters that they care about beyond just what's displayed on the urban tab. And those parameters are created and stored within analytics. Analytics, if you haven't used it before, it's really cool. Analytics is basically like giving you Excel right here within the browser. So this is a template that I built out earlier. This is a very simple but powerful return on cost pro forma. So think if we're switching gears from design outcomes, maybe now we're looking at financial outcomes. And it is still drawing down from the model. If we look at what the hard costs are, it's A times B, where A is the hard cost parameter and B is the gross area of the building or the usage, and then it sums them together. So really nice, kind of simple but effective way of going through each of the different financial considerations, incomes, costs, yields, and then giving us some kind of report to look back on the performance of each of these different scenarios. So these are very low density products that we built on this particular site, but you can see based on my return on costs, which is a metric that's saying, go and get me the net operating income and put it over the currency cost and capital. Sorry, the total currencies and capital cost. And that's giving me this sort of simplistic return on cost expression. That option 1 is far better than option 2. Option 2 is far better than option 1, but they're both pretty rough in terms of how they pencil. So let's just look at how this is configured to start. I'm going to open up Configure. Configure is the location where we can set all of our assumptions or settings around analytics, which is that spreadsheet type builder I was referring to. And there's this cool category here that says split by layer. So now if I turn that off, you'll see we're back to where we were with the urban tab, which is everything is summed up into one expression. So now that could be helpful if you are looking at multi-phase, you want to see everything all together. But generally speaking, it's something that we want to split up by layer. So I'm going to come in here and say split by layer. And when I create this split by layer, it takes the two sets of geometries that are sitting on the different layers, default layer, scenario 2 layer, and isolates them. So we can consider the IRR or the return on costs or the yield, the number of buildings or the kilotons of carbon, whatever it is that we care about by design scenario. And then in this situation, it doesn't matter if the layer is on or off. We're always going to see its metrics broken out by what it is. So that's a really cool feature. I personally love this breaking it out by layer. I use this a lot when I do all sorts of different analyses. And then obviously the views is a really nice way to help people understand what's on the analytics tab, and linking these two names of scenario 1, scenario 2, and layer 1 and layer 2 obviously is very helpful to get people's head around what equals what.